The day was almost over. Just then a mysterious thing appeared and stood between the sun and their ship. The broad and crimson red sun appeared to be peeping through the iron bars of a prison window. The mariner and his fellow prayed to Virgin Mary to have mercy on them. The skeleton ship was now approaching them fast. The ancient mariner heart began to beat violently to see it approaching them. He was greatly surprised to see that its sail looked like cobwebs floating in the air and shining in the light of the sun. The lines are also important, very important. The western wave was all aflame. The day was well nigh done. Almost upon the western wave rested the broad bright sun, when that strange shape drove suddenly betwixt us and the sun. And instead the sun was flecked with bars, as if through a dungeon grate we peered with broad and burning face. Alas, thought I, and my heart beat loud. How fast she nears and nears are those her sails that glance in the sun like restless gossameres. Are those her ribs through which the sun did peer as through a grate? And is that woman all her crew? Is that a death? And are there two? Is death that woman's mate? The ancient mariner looked with horror at the ship. He saw just one woman in the ship and wondered if she was the only crew. Then he noticed another figure. The first figure looked like the spirit of death. He wondered if the second figure was her mate. The ancient mariner looked with horror at the ship. He saw just one woman on the ship and wondered if she was the only crew. Then he noticed another figure. The first figure looked like the spirit of death. He wondered if the second figure was her maid. Was her mate. The skeleton ship was now approaching them fast. The mariner's heart began to beat violently to see it approaching them. He was greatly surprised to see that its sail looked like cobwebs floating in the air and shining in the light of the sun. Turn to page number 138, stanza number 3. The explanation is very important for doing, it is very important for doing explanation. The lines, stanza number 3, the lines are: her lips were red, her looks were free, her looks were yellow as gold, her skin was as white as leprosy. The nightmare life and death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. The lines once again: her lips were red, her looks were free, her looks were yellow as gold, her skin was as white as leprosy. The nightmare life in death was she, who thicks man's blood with cold. The lips of the woman were red. Her hair was golden yellow, She had bold looks. Her skin was as white as leprosy. That horrible woman was life and death. She was a nightmare personified and was capable of thickening any man's blood. The lines are so important for doing explanation. So let me explain in detail the stanza consisting these lines. Here the poet writes about a woman who is called life in death. Her lips were red and her hair was golden yellow. She had a very bold looks. Her skin was white like that of a person struck with leprosy. She was a nightmare who had the power to thicken the blood of any man. She had come for giving some kind of suffering or agony to the mariner and his companions. The reason is that the mariner, with the assent of the companions, had shot the albatross to death without any reason. Here, the language of the lines is simple and clear, and it is about a nightmare. It brings some kind of fear in the heart of the readers. In these lines, there is a fair presentation of supernatural beings also. The nightmare, fearful dream of these lines is not without horror or terror. So there is a reality of the supernatural beings. In fact, Coleridge makes the supernatural natural and Wordsworth makes the natural supernatural. Here and there is full exercise of the poet's fancy and imagination in this poem titled The Ancient Mariner. So, at last, the skeleton ship came near their own ship. Then the ancient mariner saw that the two figures were playing at dice. The figure of life and death exclaimed that the game was over and that she had won. She whistled thrice out of joy. The sun sank down below the horizon. The stars appeared in the sky. It was immediately dark. The haunted ship disappeared. When the ship disappeared, it created a whispering sound and it could be heard in the distance. The mariner and his shipmates listened to this sound and looked sideways. The ancient mariner was filled with fear. He was horror stricken. He felt as if fear was draining away his lifeblood. The stars were dim and the night was very dark. In the light of the lamp, the face of the helmsman looked pale. The dew drops fell from the sails. In the light of the moon, the ancient mariner saw his fellow sailors drop down dead one by one. They died so quickly that they could not utter a groan or a sigh. However, just as they died, they cast at the mariner with a painful glance and cursed him with their eyes. 200 living men dropped down dead one by one, but the mariner could hear neither a sigh nor a groan. Their souls fled from their body. As these souls passed by him, they made a hissing sound, like the one he had made when he had shot the albatross with his crossbow. The lines are very important. 4 times 50 living men, and I heard nor sigh nor groan. With heavy thump, a lifeless lump, they dropped down one by one. The souls did from their bodies fly. They fled to bliss or woe, and every soul it passed me by, like the whiz of my crossbow. The souls did from their bodies fly, they fled to bliss or woe, and every soul is it passed me by, like the whiz of my crossbow. In the present poem, the atmosphere appears to us as dreamy, fantastic, airy, and supernatural, but all these have been made lifelike and real by the poet. The supernatural elements in this poem is not just horrible or gothic kind. The supernatural for Coleridge is associated with the unknown mysteries and secret powers and invisible forces of nature or God. I wish to conclude here with for now, and at last there is a workout for all of you for today. Give me an example of classical poet and romantic poet. And second question is how a poetry is different from prose. Send me your answer, response immediately as quickly as you can on this platform of online teaching. So till then, goodbye and have a nice day.